more about ISIS, its recruitment here in the United States. Joining us now is Congressman Adam Schiff. He's the ranking Democrat of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for coming in. So far this year, 26 suspects arrested, believed to be wanting to forces with ISIS, another 6 charged today in Minnesota, and a lot of experts saying this is just the beginning. Get ready for a whole lot more. Your analysis?
Well, unfortunately, I think that's probably right. And most disturbing to me is this Ohio case of someone who did actually successfully get to Syria and successfully came back. And one of the things that we obviously have to look at is when did we know that he was coming back? And there was an interim period, I think, between December and February when state charges were leveled against him that he had freedom of travel. So that's a grave concern. But we can expect, unfortunately, to see more of this. The Minnesota case just shows how diligent people are going to be about traveling to the war zone or trying to get there. And that's the kind of thing that keeps us up at night. Here's an interesting new twist, though. These 6 charged in Minnesota today wanting to go to Syria to work with ISIS, mostly the Somalis, the Somali Americans in Minnesota. They used to be interested in going to help al-Shabaab, an al-Qaeda affiliate in Somalia or elsewhere in Africa. Is there a new development here that I'm missing? Well, I think the development we're seeing, and we're seeing it beyond Somalia, is just the attractive power of ISIS propaganda. You see new ISIS forming in Afghanistan and Pakistan, competing with the Taliban there. That was never an issue before. And you see in other places, too, these other terrorist groups in a very synergistic competition with each other, and ISIS coming out on top. And this is a very threatening development for us. Is the U.S. doing enough to target ISIS right now? Because we know the U.S. has done a lot to target al-Qaeda, AQAP in Yemen and elsewhere, but ISIS per se. Well, we certainly are in Syria and in Iraq, and even more so in Iraq. I think the strategy has been really focus on Iraq first, expel ISIS from Iraq before figuring out how we go after it in Syria. But we are also seeing this dangerous proliferation. And you've been talking a lot on your show today about Libya. Libya is a dangerous new ground, and probably the most important thing we can do there is try to get the legitimate government and this other government in Tripoli talking to each other and working together and resolving their differences, because this vacuum, not unlike the situation in Yemen, is causing ISIS to thrive in Libya, just as it's causing al-Qaeda to thrive in Yemen. I want to get your reaction to 2 videos that ISIS has now released. First in Libya, the beheading, the killing of Ethiopian Christians. There you see some still pic. We're not going to show the video. It's simply too gruesome, but follows the beheading of a bunch of Egyptian Christians. They're really trying to use this as propaganda to show they're killing Christians. Why do they think that's good propaganda? Well, it's a good question, but it does seem to be working. It does seem to be attracting people to come and join ISIS, this attack they're making on other ethnic minorities, and particularly on Christians. One of the other things that's disturbing about this is the degree to which it appears, if these videos are authentic, and there's no reason to believe they're not, that ISIS in Syria and Iraq is exercising some level of coordination and control over these Libyan branches of ISIS. That was something we weren't quite sure had happened yet. But as ISIS spreads in Libya, we also see increasing hand of ISIS from Syria and Iraq. The narrator of this half-hour video showing the beheadings of these Christians in Libya seems to have an American accent. I don't know if you've listened to it. Do you know, you're a member of the Intelligence Committee, you're the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee. Is there a suspicion who this American might be, if in fact the narrator is an American? You know, I have heard the voice. It certainly sounds like it could be an American. There's nothing definitive that I can say here today, but obviously this is something we're looking at very intensively. We want to identify who this is, just as we have with those that have been part of the propaganda machine in Syria. As we remember, the British accented Jihadi Jihad, Mohammed Mwazi, his real name. We remember that video. Now, apparently, this new narrator may be an American, so we'll watch that closely. Very different video released by ISIS today in Iraq, showing them dealing really nicely. Well, look at this. Young kids being brought to an amusement park in Iraq to show, you know what, life is great under ISIS. You see some of the amusement park there. They're treating the kids great. This is another part of their propaganda. Absolutely. It's a big part of the propaganda, and I think it is vehemently at odds with the reality on the ground, which is why we're seeing and hearing of a lot of dissension within ISIS ranks. They're having to kill a lot of people who want to leave ISIS I wonder if that recruiter that's affiliated with those Minnesota people that attempted to join the fight is sharing any of the experiences, doubtful, about people who are being killed because they want to escape this travesty that they've signed on to.
All right, I want you to stand by, Congressman. We have a lot more to talk about. We'll take a quick break. The U.S. is moving an aircraft carrier battle group off the coast of Yemen as we speak right now. Much more with Congressman Adam Schiff when we come back. Adam Schiff, he's the ranking Democrat of the House Intelligence Committee. We're following the breaking news. A U.S. military official telling CNN American warships with thousands of sailors and Marines on board prepare to intercept as many as 9 Iranian ships that are believed to be heading to Yemen right now. The United States is on alert for Iranian arms shipments to the Shiite Houthi rebel forces. And as you know, Congressman, the USS Theodore Roosevelt, that's the aircraft carrier, accompanied by the guided missile cruiser, the USS Normandy, the entire battle group. There may be, 6 or 8 or 10,000 sailors and Marines, dozens of warplanes, attack helicopters, fighter aircraft. They're moving to that area. Yemen, would you recommend using some of that firepower to go after these Shiite Houthi rebels in Yemen?
Well, I wouldn't recommend that we get involved directly in the fight. We're certainly providing intelligence and logistical support to the Saudis, and I think that we should. But I'm not sure that we want to have American airmen and women risking their lives over Yemen in this proxy fight that's going on now between the Saudis and the Iranians. It's a bold enough step, I think, at all to be providing this potential naval blockade, and that could lead to a confrontation with Iran. I would hope that these Iranian ships, if they're carrying weapons, will turn around. They're no match for the American warships, but nonetheless, there's a real danger of escalation.
Because we're told most of the weapons that the Houthi have received from Iran have arrived via ship. Iran's not that far away. They move their battleships to the coast of Yemen, they unload, and then they presumably move back. The U.S. is presumably trying to stop that.
Absolutely, and the Iranians are denying that they're providing arms to the Houthis. They have provided them in the past. I don't know whether they're prepared to go this distance now and risk this kind of confrontation with the U.S. and the Gulf allies in such a provocative step. I hope that's not the case. You also have to hope that there's no hothead on those Iranian ships that's going to start an altercation. They would lose that altercation, but it would nonetheless be a major escalation if that took place.
I don't think you want to mess with the U.S. aircraft carrier battle group with a lot of Marines and sailors on board with a lot of firepower as well. As bad as the Houthi Shiite rebels backed by Iran are in Yemen, AQAP, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, from the U.S. perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe even worse.
No, absolutely. The Houthis don't have an ambition to attack the United States. They, at this point, may have an ambition to incur into Saudi Arabia and attack the Saudis. But AQAP has tried repeatedly to blow up our aircraft. They're one of the most external focused of the Al-Qaeda chapters, meaning they want to go after the West, they want to go after the United States, and they made repeated and sophisticated attempts. They have one of the premier bomb makers in the world. So the ability of Al-Qaeda now to take over the 5th largest city in Yemen, the ability to access resources from that bank and access weapons, this is of grave concern to us.
You want the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, to let a vote come up to authorize the use of military force by the United States in Iraq, Syria, presumably elsewhere in the region. What's the holdup?
Well, Tom Cole and I have authored a bipartisan letter we're circulating to generate support for a debate and a vote on this. And the holdup has, I think, been congressional apathy. Before the elections, many said, well, we can't have a vote of this Congress. We should wait for the new Congress. After the elections, they said, let's wait for the president to give us something. We got something with the president. There's no excuse anymore 8 months into this. And to me, it's deeply ironic that you have such a crushed vote on the Iran agreement before there is one, but we're 8 months into a war and we don't have a vote yet.
All right, Adam Schiff, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks, Will.
Just ahead,